Well, I think they've been kind of written out of the biblical literature and smeared out of the history of religion in general, and that's why it's so important for us to reclaim them, not only on a scholarly level, but in our bodies and our lives. By telling their stories, by musing on the qualities of their stories that directly connect to our own transformation, and I find that to be very exciting and very accessible. So, for instance, with Miriam, Miriam was the sister of Moses, the older sister. And when you really dig deep into Miriam, she was kind of an equal prophet. She was definitely considered to be a prophet in Judaism, but of equal status to Moses. What is a prophet? A prophet is a spokesperson for the divine. So the divine spoke through Miriam just as much as through Moses, but in a different way. Miriam was the one who led the Israelites through the parting of the Red Sea in the magical mythical story of the Exodus, the passage of the Israelites from slavery, from bondage in Egypt to freedom in the promised land. And they had to pass through the narrow place, Mitzrayim. And Miriam's the one who led them. And she led them with a group of women singing and dancing and playing the tambourine or the timbrel. And so there are all these beautiful images of Miriam and the women playing these musical instruments and dancing their way through the narrow places and opening the way for the Israelites to pass through. When they got to the other side and the Red Sea closed, drowning Pharaoh's army, Miriam and the women, their first task was to mourn those who died in order for them to be set free.
Hmm.
And so there's such an embodied quality to Miriam's story. Wherever she went, a well sprang up with clear, fresh water. It's called Miriam's Well. And when she died, before they ever reached freedom, liberation, the well dried up. And Moses kind of lost his mooring when Miriam died. There's another part of Miriam's story has been very perplexing to men and also to white people. And that is, there was this time during the Exodus, during the passage, the 40 years in the desert in the Sinai, when Miriam questioned Moses, questioned his power and authority. And one of the things she did was she questioned his marriage to an Ethiopian woman. And it's been a source of confusion. Why? What was Miriam questioning? But Midrash, especially feminist wisdom, has determined that what Miriam may have been questioning was that Moses had taken on a second wife and was neglecting his first wife. And the punishment for Miriam daring to question Moses, actually, she said to God, how come he gets to be called the prophet? Aaron and I are prophets as well. We too speak your word and carry your message to the people. And she was struck with leprosy, something like that. It's often translated as leprosy, but her skin turned from black to white. So the punishment for Miriam is that her beautiful black, rich skin was turned white, and she was exiled for 7 days outside of the camp for daring to question Moses. The woman speaking truth to power, to the masculine power, and the punishment was to be turned white. And
Hmm.
what's beautiful to me about that story is that the people halted in their progression. They stopped and they waited for the full 7 days until Miriam, who was exiled to the outside of the camp, could be returned, restored to her rightful place among the people who were utterly devoted to her. I don't know. There's so many layers of that story that fascinate me. I mean, I'm bow to Miriam for speaking up, and questioning her brother, who represents many beautiful, wonderful things, Moses, but he also represents the masculine power paradigm. And Miriam was saying, what about me? And I think the what about me is what about the feminine? What about the body? What about embodiment? What about sexuality? What about the water? I mean, Miriam was probably deeply connected to the mana as well, which contained the nourishment for all the beings as they pass through this desert space.